Here you're supposed to go like this.
That's what my mom would do. You come right
What did
here.
the Fonz do, Jeff?
Where's the makeup people when I need them? Makeup and hair.
Right.
Gary was supposed to make us all a piece of fruit this time. I don't see him.
Oh, I know it. Ready? Okay, at this time, we will call to order the City of Kenai Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for May 13th, 2020. Will you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? To the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, liberty and
liberty and justice for all.
Item roll call, please.
Chairman Twait?
Here.
Vice Chairman Fikes?
Here.
Commissioner Springer?
Here.
Commissioner McIntyre? Commissioner Greenberg? Sorry, Jeff, I'm going to mute you really quick. And Commissioner Greenberg, it's not on. I know McIntyre is. Commissioner Halstead?
I'm here.
And Commissioner Askin?
Here.
Okay, Chair, you form.
Oh, he's on mute.
Somebody muted me. That's not. A3 agenda approval, wishes of the commission.
I move we approve the agenda as written.
All right, motion by Commissioner Askin. Do we have a second?
I would second that.
Okay, we also want to probably include a laydown. Correct.
Including the laydown.
All right, and that laydown, I don't have it in front of me. Do we want to read that in? Could we? Somebody have that handy to read it into what it is? I can do it off my phone. I got it in here.
Just lay down, I can read it.
Okay, yeah, okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm not that quick. I just said I could, not that I would.
It's the laydown from Elizabeth Appleby regarding the call and the letter complaint she got.
Resolution.
Yeah, yeah, it would
Regarding
be,
resolution PZ 2020-04, I believe.
And
yeah,
07.
and 07, correct. So,
And 07.
yeah, so. All right, Commissioner Fikes, you want to go ahead and read that for him since you seem to have it right there?
Sure. So the laydown would be for the meeting of May 13th. The action is add to item D1, item resolution number PZ 2020-07. It is a memorandum of additional recommended conditions. And the second action item added to item F1 is a resolution PZ 2020-04. That is a memorandum of supplemental information and a memorandum attachment, written public comments letter from Mr. Jason R. Parks and Miss Hannah C. Parks at 740 Baleen Ave. And a third memorandum attachment, Kenai Municipal Code 14.22.010 land use table.
All right, thank you. And who seconded that?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Item A4, consent agenda. Wishes of the commission.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll
That was
second.
Commissioner Halstead.
Yes, sir.
Yep, and seconded by Commissioner Askin. Any objections to the approval of the consent agenda? Seeing, hearing none, we will pass the consent agenda and move on to item C, scheduled public comment. We have none. Item D is unscheduled public comment. Anyone wishing to speak to an item not on tonight's agenda? And I'll look to the clerk's office to make sure nobody wants to do anything there.
Point of order. Did we
Yes, sir.
approve the previous minutes, item B? Was I,
That is
Did I miss
done
that?
by, that is done through the consent agenda.
consent agenda? Okay.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep. No problem. So nobody trying to call in to speak? Oh, holding one moment.
Okay, sorry about that. There's somebody waiting. Let me find out. Hi, somebody just joined. Is somebody, we have somebody that just joined the meeting with the ending 3922.
Yes,
Can I get your name?
Jan Nelson,
Okay, you said Jan?
I know it's D-N, D-E-A-N-N-E.
Jan Nelson. Okay, and we're at the point of the agenda asking if there was any unscheduled public comment. Is that what you're interested in speaking, or are you just coming in on the meeting?
I'm just coming on the meeting.
Okay, great, thank you. Go ahead, Chairman.
All right, so seeing nobody stepping up for unscheduled public comment, we'll move on to item E, consideration of plats. We have one before us tonight. E1 is resolution PZ 2020-07. It's a preliminary subdivision plat of Beaver Loop Acres Edition number 2. Plat was submitted by Segerser Surveys, 30485 Roseland Street, Soldotna, on behalf of Beaver Loop and Gravel LLC and the estate of Patrick Doyle and Mary Doyle, 2243 Beaver Loop Road, Kenai. A staff report.
Thank you, Chair Twait. So the staff report for this one starts on page 9. And this on the plat is on page 15. And there's a larger 11 by 17 version that was included in the mailed packet. So it shows how essentially this plat is adding a row of smaller lots along Beaver Loop Road and leaving the larger tract A behind it. So I wrote in my staff report, access would be via Beaver Loop Road. I did write in my staff report that it's maintained by the state of Alaska. However, the maintenance will be transferred to the city once the paving on Beaver Loop Road is finished this summer. So that was one of the lay down additional conditions to change that reference, since the city will be maintaining that road in the very near future. There are not city water and sewer lines available to the proposed subdivision. So property owners would have to install a private well and septic systems following the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation requirements. There is currently a reference to wastewater disposal in plat note 6. There's one lot that was left off of that plat note. That's lot 2A. So that was the additional laydown condition to add the reference to lot 2A for wastewater disposal. There is a 15-foot utility easement along the southern boundary of the proposed lots. And that's denoted in Plat Note 4. These parcels are all within the rural residential zone of the city. Plat Note 2 references that the subdivision would be subject to City of Kenai zoning regulations. And then I noted that there's a gravel pit, so it's Beaver Loop Sand and Gravel, currently operates a gravel pit through a conditional use permit with the city. And this subdivision is in alignment with their reclamation plans. One day when the gravel pit is done, this could be reclaimed for residential use, and so subdividing these lots is a step towards that end goal. And then I concluded the preliminary plat meets the requirements of city subdivision code. And then I recommend that the commission approve of the preliminary plat and send it to the Kenai Peninsula Borough for their consideration, subject to the following conditions. That is, further development of the property conforms to federal, state, and local regulations. 2, the title block is revised. So that's in the corner where it shows the title of the plat. That be revised to show that it also covers a second previous plat, so Lot 2 Beaver Loop Acre subdivision, Plat 9415. That Plat 9415 is the reference that needs to be added. Then 3, that the former lot line that's on Lot 2A, that should be labeled. 4, the signature line for Patrick Doyle should be revised to read the estate of Patrick Doyle. 5, in the vicinity map on the upper right of the plat, there's I think it was just the map showing the location within the city. It had the Cook Inlet, and there's an inlet that can be deleted. So those are the 5 that were in the packet, and then there's 3 additional ones that were included in the laydown. And those are 6, that's the wastewater to add Lot 2A. So amend the text for Plat Note 6 to add Lot 2A. The text that covers wastewater disposal for lots 5 through 9 is also applicable to Lot 2A. 7 would be to demarcate wetland areas on the plat, either by showing contours or somehow showing the drainage on the parcel. 8 is amend Plat Note 3 to reflect the new city maintenance of Beaver Loop Road. And I also said remove the apostrophe from right-of-ways to state no private access to city maintained right-of-ways permitted unless approved by the city of Kenai. Thank you for your consideration. That's the end of my staff report.
All right, thank you. At this time, I would look for a motion, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution PZ 2020-07, a preliminary subdivision plat of Beaver Loop Acres, edition number 2.
All right, do we have a
Lay
second?
down.
Well, I would second with laydown.
I don't think there was a laydown with this one, was there?
Yes, there was. That was the 3 additional conditions, 6, 7, and 8 that I.
Oh, okay, gotcha, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right, discussion. Anyone have any comments? Commissioner McIntyre?
Yeah. One question I have is on the plat to the, as I'm looking at, to the left of Lot 1, that thin strip there, is that the easement you were talking about, utility easement, or what is that?
Ms. Howell, yep.
Commissioner McIntyre, that is likely a remnant of a flag lot. It's not the easement. The easement I was referencing was the utility easement. So it's on, let's see, plat
Yeah,
note
page
4,
15.
where it's stating the front 15 feet of the adjacent right of way is the utility easement. So the front 15 feet of those lots along Beaver Loop Road, that's a utility easement. So that's what I was referencing in Plat Note 4.
Oh, okay, okay. So we don't know what that thin strip is, just kind of there.
Well, I'm guessing it was put in for access to, I'm gonna flip to this one.
For like the gravel pit?
It's
It
a
says
roadway.
It's a road.
C1.
It's a roadway.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a road leading to the gravel pit.
property.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would guess, and that's one of the questions I have is that, so the remaining of that portion of track 2 or track A2 is gonna have to be accessible. So I'm assuming that's where the access to the remainder of that lot is when the reclamation plan continues on into the future, I'm assuming. Correct, Ms. Appleby?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Any other questions, comments? And then I just want for clarification again to staff that these are rural residential lots, right? They're zoned R1?
Churchway, they're in the rural residential or the RR zone.
RR zone, okay.
Yeah.
All right, any other comment or questions? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Vice Chairman Fikes,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Commissioner McIntyre,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg is still not on. Commissioner Halstead,
Yes,
Commissioner Askin,
Yes.
motion passes.
I vote yes too.
I am so sorry.
That's
That
okay.
was great.
It
Motion passes.
wasn't the deciding vote, so it's all right. Okay, we will move on to item F, public hearings. The first one we have tonight is F1, Resolution PZ 2020-04. It is an application for the rezoning of an approximately 10.6 acre parcel described as the portion of the south one half of the southeast quarter of the southwest quarter lying north of K Beach Road, Section 17, Township 5 North, Range 11 West, accepting therefrom VIP Country Estate Subdivision Part 5 from the rural residential to limited commercial zones. The application is submitted by the majority property owners, Rick and Connie Van, Kasilof, Alaska. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair Twait. So in the staff report starts on page 18 for this agenda item. The city received an application from the majority property owners to rezone a parcel from rural residential to limited commercial. So the code I referenced, Kenai Municipal Code 1420.270, that states ways or how a zoning change request can be initiated. And so one of the ways is for the majority property owners to submit an application. And so that's the route that occurred in this case. The parcel is 10.6 acres in size. Code says that a rezone request, it must rezone an area that is at least 10 acres in size unless it's enlarging an adjacent district boundary. And so this one is not doing that. So this is, it's over 10 acres in size to meet the requirements for submission of a zoning request. And I just want to note the process. So the Planning and Zoning Commission could recommend tonight to send this to City Council, and then City Council would make the final decision on the rezone request. So I noted the public notice procedures for public hearings were followed. And then looking at my analysis on page 19, so this parcel, it's on California Beach Road or Key Beach Road. There's approximately 1,292 feet of frontage along the road. California Beach Road is it's a major collector street maintained by the state of Alaska. There's a paved bike path that it's on the side that this parcel is that runs directly in front of the parcel. Across the street on California Beach Road is the borough, so this is just within the city limits. But across the street on California Beach Road, there is currently commercial development, including a Panama Reds retail store and a fish market. I included some photos of those businesses in the packet. I noted there's several multifamily housing units that are currently next to the parcel. And then I went over the intents of the rural residential and limited commercial zone. So the rural residential zone is to provide for low density residential development not lying in rural areas in a form which creates a stable and attractive residential environment. And the limited commercial zone is intended to provide transition areas between commercial and residential districts by allowing low to medium volume business, mixed residential, and other compatible uses which complement and do not materially detract from the uses allowed with adjacent parcels. So I felt that this parcel fit with the intent of the limited commercial zone, since there is a rural residential neighborhood behind it, but there's a lot of commercial development already on the other side of California Beach Road and multifamily units. So I felt it met the intent of the limited commercial zone, where it could provide a transition area between these commercial and residential districts. And then I noted the City of Kenai Comprehensive Plan, it does state that transportation improvements have spurred development along California Beach Road. And this zoning change would reflect that change in the city's layout, and it would support Goal 3, land use to develop land use strategies to implement a forward-looking approach to community growth and development. And so that I recommend that the commission approve this. And then I just want to go over the laydown materials, since I gave some additional information on public comment, and I also went over in detail the difference in allowed uses between the two zones. So we received a letter from residents at 740 Baleen Avenue. So that's in the residential area behind this parcel. And the parcel is currently treed and vacant. And so they noted in their letter, I'm just going to read off of here now. They noted in their letter some concerns for decreasing adjacent property values, pedestrian safety, and a concern for increased traffic. And we did also receive a phone call with some concerns for increased traffic. So I've attached those for the commission's consideration. And then I also attached the land use table, where I highlighted the RR and LC columns just to try to clearly show what uses this would change. So I tried to go through and state what uses were more restrictive within the limited commercial zone, which uses were less restrictive, and which uses would stay the same. So there would be some more restrictive uses. A lot of these are allowed with a conditional use permit in the rural residential zone. So the plat we just had, there's surface extraction that was in the rural residential zone, and that's allowed with a conditional use permit. And these uses tend to need a larger land area, so warehouses, surface extraction, automotive, those would be more restrictive. The uses that the applicant, I feel it was the reason for them requesting this rezone change, is that it would allow it would relax some of the restrictions on businesses that are consistent with the limited commercial transition between commercial and residential. So I listed those here. So professional offices, clinics, and none of these, the ones I just listed would, they would be allowed without a conditional use permit. There are still business uses that would still require a conditional use permit, but I tried to spell it all out, what the uses, the change in uses. Then there's several that would remain the same. Those were the last 3 bullets in my laydown. That is the end of my staff report. So I recommend the commission approve this use. I think it's consistent, approve this change in zoning because it's consistent with the limited commercial zone and for the reasons I outlined in the resolution. And I know that the applicant is on the call, and I think some members of the public who would like to speak to this agenda item as well.
All right. If we could get a motion first, then we'll open up the public hearing. So if we could get a motion, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution PZ 2020-04.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All
Point
right,
of,
seconded by Commissioner Halstead, I believe.
I have a point of order, Commissioner
Oh,
Chairman.
absolutely.
I live in this subdivision, so would it be best if I abstain?
Do you feel it would have some sort of an effect on how you would vote?
Not really.
If you feel comfortable that you can vote and judge it impartially, then I would say you could be part of the discussion and the voting.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So we will open it up for public testimony, and if the applicant is available, we'll let them go first, and then we'll weigh in with the rest of the public. So if the applicant is out there and ready, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
This is Connie Dan, and the purpose for requesting this rezone is to create economic opportunity and development in the city of Kenai so that small businesses can potentially run their new small business startups and live under one roof, which makes it so much more affordable than to be paying a home mortgage, a commercial lease, and potentially a shop space lease, which hinders small businesses from being able to get their feet under them and grow their business. And currently there's just not very many, if any, affordable locations within the city that allow this.
All right. Anything else?
I would definitely like to see, access off of K Beach. But the concept is that potentially someone could enter their property and have their more private home site in the back of the property, and the front of their property be opened up to more of a commercial business operation.
Gotcha. I will see if any of the commissioners have any questions for you at this point in time. Anyone have a question or comment for the applicant?
I do.
Oh, Commissioner Askin.
Is Van, is the apartment going to be above the commercial space?
It would depend on the type of business and the family situation. It would be, designed to fit whatever their needs are.
Okay, so you wouldn't be building it and then people moving in, it would be what you would build to suit. Is that the plan?
Yeah, that would be the idea, is that, if someone needs this kind of a situation, that we create something that is affordable and would function properly for whatever their potential business might be, that, suits their family and their business and their lifestyle.
Okay. Do you know if you can get access from K Beach at this point?
We would have to make application with the Department of Transportation.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question.
All right. Mr. Halstead.
So if I'm looking at page 26 in our packet, which is the map, green area with a red box around the proposed area, would there be if I'm understanding you correctly, would there be a possibility of those being not necessarily subdivided, but you'd have areas where you'd have the frontage of the business on K Beach Road and then the potential to access a residential side of this through the Baleen Avenue?
I think that would be a good model.
Okay. And then if the K Beach Road access wasn't a possibility, would you then access this site through VIP Drive?
That would definitely be an option.
Okay. So, the other option is Baleen Avenue, which is what you're trying to avoid as far as, main use.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you. That's it for me.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
So I
Okay.
guess I have a question.
Yep, Commissioner McIntyre.
So right now we're just looking at changing the zoning on this parcel, but we don't, if at some point they just, I assume they would probably subdivide, that would have to come back through the commission, the subdivision plot and ideas or whatever plan for reconsideration. So in a plot this large, I assume there are probably restrictions on how small the lots can be, or how large, how small you can basically make them. So are we looking at, a maximum of 4 lots or 5 lots or whatever in there? Does anybody have any idea?
I would leave that up to Ms. Appleby, but I'm sure in the limited commercial zone, there's a minimum lot size. I would guess you're looking at potentially, I'm just going to say 10 lots of an acre. Plus or whatever it would be. But Ms. Appleby, do you have any more? I don't have my land use table in front of me.
Yes. Territory, I'm just glancing. I have, it's actually on the wall of my office, the Kenai Municipal Code 14.24.020 that has general requirements. And so that has the development requirements table. So for, I'm just glancing really quick. I'm actually just gonna walk over to it. Yeah, the development requirements columns for rural residential and limited commercial are actually the same. So for both of those zones, the minimum lot width is 90 feet. And then setbacks are 20 in the front, 15 at the sides, 20 at the rear. Maximum lot coverage, so the maximum you can cover the lot with structures is 30%, and maximum height is 35 feet. And I had said in my staff report, I'd listed, yeah, about 1,200 is the frontage on California Ski Beach.
So is there a minimum lot size? I think you gave a width, but did I hear a acreage or a square footage? Which technically is a little ahead of where we need to go tonight, but
Right, right.
Yeah, let me, it is, that road does not have a number where I'm looking right now. I'm just going to check, very quickly.
So from what I'm looking at on this map, I would almost, I'm anticipating this being subdivided similar to the surrounding areas. If you look to the west of this, I would kind of envision that would be as small as it would go, whether it could or not.
Right, and then you're also going to have to take into account that we've got to fit on-site water and sewer too. So those would be something I think when we tackle that in a subdivision application, we'll have an idea of what is proposed by the surveyor and engineers at that point.
Yeah, okay.
If I can jump in just to circle back, the question on the minimum lot size. So I'm still looking in 1424 this time, .010 instead of .020. So that gives a minimum lot size in square feet. So within the rural residential zone, it's 20,000 square feet. So this is for, it gives it for residential dwellings. So a single up to a 4-family dwelling within rural residential requires 20,000 square feet. The limited commercial zone, a single family up to a 4-family requires 12,500 square feet. So if they're subdivided for a residence, it could be a lower lot size within the limited commercial zone.
All right.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, seeing none, I guess I'll put it back to the clerk's office. If we have people that are looking to provide testimony, you can pick and choose them and we will take them.
Okay, there are a couple of people online. I'm just not sure. So let's see. Hannah, do you want to speak on this item?
Yes, please. So I'm Hannah Parks. I live on 740 Baleen. I'm directly across Baleen Avenue from this lot. My husband and my young son both live here too. We are concerned about increased traffic on Baleen if this is developed into a commercial lot, just because it's a dirt road and a lot of people in this neighborhood of VIP estates that like to walk around, and lots of little kids who live here. And so residential traffic is fine. People who live here know to drive slowly, and it's a pretty low density area, so there's not a lot of traffic to begin with. But if there were to be commercial businesses on this road, especially if they don't have access to that lot from K Beach, they have to drive on from Baleen, there'd be definitely increased traffic here and potentially faster traffic as well of people who don't realize that this is a residential neighborhood. And so my husband and I were concerned about the safety of pedestrians here, and then also just about property value if there's a lot more noise and a lot more traffic, and then if the whole lot is cleared, like you see in some other places where they've cleared the lots and then it's kind of vacant for a while, we'd be concerned about property values going down as well if there's just not a whole lot sitting there and it just kind of looks vacant. So those are our major concerns. And we definitely would want to see that addressed before, you know, kind of feeling comfortable with this being developed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Springer?
No, I cleared my throat.
Well, it lit you up. You went green. Anyone else have any questions? And I'll just chime in and to one of your points, and that is the lot clearing. what used to be a acceptable practice to go in there and clear them is kind of been remedied through some hard knocks and lessons learned here by the city. So you're not allowed to go in there and clear those. It'd be a minimum amount of time done. So that portion of it I can speak to ease your conscience on that portion of it. The other things, I think you have valid points, and we'll take those into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Ms. Clerk?
Deanne, would you like to speak on this item? She's on mute. I don't see it. The other.
And if you press *6, you'll be able to unmute yourself. Okay, I unmuted her. Deanne, did you want to speak to this matter?
No.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else out there? None? Okay. At this point, I'll just circle back a little bit. Anyone have any questions for the applicant, or are we good to close the public hearing? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for discussion. Is there any discussion?
I wanted to make one
I've got a comment.
Oh, let's start with Mr. Springer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just going to comment on that lot size that you brought up earlier, is that basically in order to have, when you have a well and septic and not city water, the minimum lot size is going to be 40,000 square feet. So that's about an acre, a little less than an acre. So there'd have to be at least 1 acre lot sizes if it were subdivided. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Absolutely, thank you. Commissioner Halstead.
I just wanted to comment on the safety concerns. I think they're very valid. I will be voting in favor of this, but I do think in the future when we approve the, I guess the layout and moving forward, the conditional use permits, that we really should take that into consideration as the possible hazards out there to small children and possible influx of traffic going on Baleen if they can't get on K Beach Road. I think that should be something that we should be very aware of. And that's it for me.
All right, point well taken. Anyone else?
Yes.
Commissioner Askin.
So having lived here several years ago, there was an attempt to try to make this particular parcel a RV park. And overwhelmingly, the subdivision banded together and stopped that because there was not going to be any access from K Beach, and they were going to come into Baleen. And all of these concerns were presented at that point. Is there a way that if we do approve this, that we can make it with the caveat that access from Baleen would be only for the residential side? Is there something we can put in place for that?
I will give my assessment of that. And my point or my position would be, I doubt we can. And I know that the state looks very unfavorably about dumping any more accesses onto their right of way. If there is another access, I would guess that will be a bit of a challenge to run everything off of K Beach. But again, and so I think that's probably something that would be for the next step in this when it actually comes back to us as a subdivision plat. I mean, I think the applicant has kind of made their wishes that they can access, or at least half of the access or some of the access off K Beach, they will do it. But I don't think it wouldn't be, I don't think a good policy for us tonight to try to do that, because for one, we're just doing a zone change. But I don't think we would want to hamstring them if the state says no, it's gonna be no. So I remember that RV park. I was a baby commissioner then, and that was one of the scariest meetings I'd ever gone to. Very angry people there that night.
Yeah, I know that the commercial access from the highway, I think, would be incredible. Residential on the back, I mean, you're gonna have to anticipate that there's gonna be some eventually there, but keeping the commercial on the highway would sure be nice.
I would agree, and maybe that's part of the surveyor's job when they lay this thing out, that they can maybe do a frontage, or there might be options to do something that way too. But again, I don't think that's for tonight. And I'll just, while I'm talking, when you look at the definition of limited commercial and where it applies, or where it seems like it should fit in the city, this is a poster child for a parcel that really makes sense. You have all that commercial activity on the road and across the street, and I think it's not as attractive to try to sell them off as residential lots because of all the road noise and everything. So I think this is a change that makes the best in use and highest use and value for the parcel. So I'll be in favor of it. Anyone else?
I do have one comment.
Commissioner Springer.
Yes, I just wanted to basically agree with what you just said, because it is probably the highest and best use of the property. It's been that way for many years, and it would be nice to see that develop somewhat. And I will be in favor of it also.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I guess I do have a question.
All right.
Or
Commissioner
response,
McIntyre.
which is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay. Going back to what Commissioner Askin said, and Commissioner Halstead, and that is, I agree with what has been said about that. Does look like the best use for this is to be commercial, given where it's located. I just want to make sure that if I vote for this, that we're not tying our hands going forward and saying, okay, now it's commercial, so no, we can't say you can't put a driveway in off of this residential area, or you can't run your business off of this residential road in the back. Are we as a commission, when it comes forward in the future, I just don't want to tie our hands. I want to be able to say, nope, if that's what you're going to do, I'm not in favor of that and won't vote for it down the road. And I want to make sure I'm not tying my hands so that I can't do that. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can vote one way tonight and another way, as it comes back as a subdivision plat. I don't think it locks you into, having to say you have to agree to both, because we're using a lot of supposition trying to figure out what the subdivision plat's going to look like when it comes back. And I think we're putting the cart before the horse on that. But I think you're right. And I think everybody's in agreement that if anything can be done to eliminate the traffic off of Baleen or limit the traffic off of there, I think that would be the best way going forward.
Okay.
Anyone else? All right, seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Halstead,
Yes.
Commissioner McIntyre,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Fikes,
Yes.
Chairman Tweet,
Yes.
Commissioner Askin,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, thank you. We will move on to item F2. It is resolution PZ 2020-11, an application for a conditional use of a sixplex for senior housing on approximately 1.215 acre parcel described as Lot 1, Kenai Meadows, and located at 2392 Reed Avenue. Application submitted by Kenai Peninsula Housing Initiative. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair Tweet. And I also just want to say thank you to the residents that provided public comment. Appreciate receiving those. For PZ 2020-11, this is requesting a conditional use permit for a 6-family dwelling unit. So history of this parcel, I gave in my staff report that starts on page 31 of the packet. In 2016, the city carved out 2 parcels from a larger one of city-owned land and donated them to Kenai Peninsula Housing Initiatives for restricted income in senior housing. The city council declared the lots no longer needed for a public purpose. The map that's included in the packet on page 43. So the best aerial imagery I have is from 2016, so it does not show the buildings that are currently on these parcels. So I also tried to include site photos on page 44 and 45. So the second photo I showed on 45, the adjacent parcel already has a 6-plex and a 4-plex. There was not a need for an additional conditional use permit for the second building on this parcel because they could build a 4-plex without that. Since the second building on the other parcel is going to be a 6-plex, another conditional use permit is required. So the photo on page 44 shows where it's cleared of trees, and that's where the building would go. But you can see that the constructed buildings are neat in appearance, and they front read out, and they look nice. Another visual display, I'm sorry if I'm jumping around just referencing the images, but I think they're really useful tools to evaluate this application. There is a site plan on page 42 that shows how the additional senior apartment 6-plex would be laid out on the right hand side of that parcel. So if I look back to the text of my staff report, I went over the conditions or the criteria for granting a conditional use permit. So I said I thought the additional 6-plex for senior housing met the intent of the rural residential zoning district. I said I thought the value of the adjoining property and neighborhood would not be significantly impaired, just given that there's the other multifamily has or restricted income and senior housing is already next door, and this would be accessed directly off of Reed Avenue, so I don't expect it to increase traffic in the neighborhood. I wrote it's in harmony with the comprehensive plan. Let's see, where did it go? Oh, and I noted under this criteria that the subject lot is much larger than the required minimum lot size within the rural residential zone. So it's 52,925 square feet, which is larger than the minimum lot size of 20,000 in the rural residential. So so it seems reasonable that they could fit another building on here. The next agenda item covers a variance because they are about 500 or 600 feet over their lot coverage. So they also need approval of that variance in order to construct this building. This would allow the use, but they still need a variance to construct the design that they've proposed, if that makes sense. So this is voting on the use of the second 6-plex on the property. Before I went over public service and utilities, there's the design shows adequate parking, Reed Avenue is a paved road. There's city water, sewer, and other utilities to support multifamily housing. Condition 5 is that the use would not be harmful to public safety health or welfare. And 6 are conditions that could be placed on the permit. So I'm recommending that the commission approve of the conditional use permit for the additional 6-family dwelling unit for seniors ages 55 and older on Lot 1, Kenai Meadows at 2392 Redoubt Avenue, subject to the following conditions. One, that further development conforms to federal, state, and local regulations. 2, 3, and 4 state actions that must be taken before they would be granted a building permit. So 2 says they have to receive approval of their landscape site plan. The one I included in the packet was, I think the city received that for the first building that was constructed. So they would have to submit one for the second building and get that approved before they could build. 3 is the variance permit I mentioned. So if they do go with this layout, they do need a variance on their lot coverage. 4, I just said that the building official has to sign off on it. 5, the fire marshal would conduct a biennial fire inspection. And then 6, 7, the remaining conditions are standard ones we put on most conditional use permits. So 6 is that they would file their annual report. 7, when requested, they would meet with city staff for on-site inspections. 8, if there's a change in the use, a new conditional use permit or an amendment must be submitted. 9, if it's the use is not occurring, then the permit granting for this use would expire. And that 10, failure to provide documentation to the city for meeting these conditions shall be grounds for the suspension and or revocation of the conditional use permit. And that is the end of my staff report.
All right, thank you. At this time, I would entertain a motion, please.
I'd like to make a motion.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes, like to approve resolution PZ 2020-11. Should I read further?
nope, I think that'll be fine.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second, all right. We will open this up for public testimony. Anyone wishing to speak to PZ 2020-11?
Oh, and sorry, I forgot to note that the applicant is also here for this resolution and the second one, if the commission would like to ask questions of the applicant.
You know what, good call. I would again ask Ms. Van if she wants to add anything to it.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm just on the telephone here. I think that Elizabeth pretty well covered everything. I know that the initial plan, when the city donated the land to KPHI, it was intended to put 2 senior buildings facing each other on that property. So I hope that this can be approved without any problem.
All right. Thank you. Stick around if anyone has any questions. And I guess we'll start there. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, we will move on then to any more public testimony. Checking with the clerk's office. Anyone's on the line?
Nobody extra is on the line.
All right, so if you have no further testimony, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion or comments. Any discussion or comments?
I would like to comment.
Commissioner Halstead.
So this is a location that I pass by quite a bit. I frequent on Redoubt Avenue, both walking and driving. And I've seen this, I guess the stages of this develop from an empty lot to the first building that was there to, I guess the second building, this being the third. And I think that they have done a stellar job in both the keeping it clean and keeping it presentable and respectable. And I think that, as far as projects go, this has been a very, very nice one to see come to fruition, just in great landscaping and great project management. And like I said, when it's all said and done, it looks very, very nice, and it really improves the area that it's in. So I will definitely be voting in favor of this, just because they've done a great job in the past, and I hope they continue on.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner McIntyre.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, when I looked at this initially, I thought, man, this is fantastic. This, hits all the bells and whistles for me. I looked at, the pictures, and I looked at the way it was laid out and everything. And I think they've done echoing what's already been said, an excellent job. Unfortunately, I think there's one little snag, and it'll come up when we talk about the variance. And that I find that unfortunate, because I really am in support of everything about this, but I'm concerned about whether legally we can go forward, given the way the law is written and based on comments that were made at the recent conference in February. But and I was going to try to see if, by point of order, we should take up the variance first, because this can't go forward without a variance as currently proposed. But unfortunately, I couldn't get my mute thing to work. I couldn't get my microphone to work, since this is the first time I've done this. So everything passed me by, and it was like, oh, well, we'll just bring it up when it comes up. So anyway, I will be voting no at this point, simply because I think there's a hiccup that I hope can be overcome, because I think it's a great project. But anyway, that's kind of where I'm at.
Anyone else have any comments or questions for staff or? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner McIntyre,
No.
Commissioner Halstead,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Fikes. You're on mute.
Yes.
Commissioner Askin,
Yes.
Chairman Twait,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, there is a 15-day appeal period that an affected party can file with the city. If none are received in that 15 days, the conditional use permit will be granted. That will move us along to item F3, Resolution PZ 2020-12, an application for a variance of Kenai Municipal Code 14.14.020, maximum lot coverage on an approximately 1.215 acre parcel described as Lot 1 Kenai Meadows and located at 2392 Redoubt Avenue. Application submitted by Kenai Peninsula Housing Initiative. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair Twait. So the commission just approved the use of a second sixplex on the parcel. So now before the commission is a request for a variance from maximum lot coverage, as the preliminary design of the sixplex has it 630 square feet over what is allowed by Kenai Municipal Code. And so this is the same parcel. So I won't go over the history again, but it's the same lot. I went over in my staff report, so it starts on page 47 of the packet. Kenai Municipal Code 1420.180, that describes the review criteria for a variance permit. So there's 5 criteria. And so I went over that in my staff report and suggested them as findings for the commission in the resolution. So the first is that special conditions or circumstances are present which are peculiar to the land or structures involved, which are not applicable to other lands or structures in the same zoning district. So again, this parcel is within the rural residential zone. And I felt that the unique circumstance that the land was donated by the city to provide housing for seniors and restricted income residents, I thought was peculiar. And I also added that the structures are designed specifically to be one level to accommodate the needs of senior residences. So if this was just a regular apartment or multifamily housing unit, I think that the city's response would be just stack them up higher or reduce your area. But because of this unique circumstance, I thought the first condition for granting a variance permit existed. The second condition is that the circumstances have not been caused by the actions of the applicant, and that the conditions and circumstances do not merely constitute a pecuniary hardship or inconvenience. And I again reference that these parcels were donated and that Kenai Peninsula Housing Initiatives as a nonprofit. And I referenced the specific ordinance that the city wants to provide affordable housing options within the city. There is also in the donation, if Kenai Peninsula Housing Initiatives does not build affordable housing for restricted income or senior residents, then the property value reverts to the city within 20 years of the land donation. So I thought that provided cause for this criteria to be met. 3 is that the variance does not authorize a use that's not that is not permitted in the zoning district. And so I said it was contingent upon getting the conditional use permit. 4, that it's the minimum variance that will provide for the reasonable use of the land or structure. So they're only asking for 630 more square feet. And that 5 is that it's not based on other non-conforming land uses or structures. And most of there's the parcel that does have the 2, the 6-plex and the 4-plex, but that one did not receive a variance, so we're not basing this one on the adjacent parcel also getting a variance. And then several of the other parcels are residential housing that would not fall into this category or set any sort of precedent. So I recommend that the commission approve the variance permit subject to the following conditions: that further development conforms to federal, state, and local regulations. Before a building permit is issued, the landscape site plan is approved, that a conditional use is obtained, and those are only 3 conditions. End of staff report.
All right, thank you. I, again, am looking for a motion, please. Commissioner Askin.
I move that we approve resolution 2020-12 with staff recommendations.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Halstead. Again, we'll open it up for public testimony. If, again, the applicant is still on the line, if they have anything they want to add, please do it now. Don't know if she's still there,
How
gone.
about that?
There she
How
is.
about that? Okay. All right. I just wanted to state that when KPHI did request the land from the city, it was intended that these two sixplexes would be constructed on the site. And it was decided that this was the amount of the property that was needed and no more. They didn't want to take any additional property more than was required to construct these. So there must be some kind of calculation error in the original calculations that were done that said what size lot was required. And unfortunately, sounds like a human error issue. But we, at KPHI, have received funding from senior funds to construct the sixplex. And there is also already applicants making application to go into the building as soon as it's completed.
All right, very good. Do you have any questions, Ms. Van? I will. One quick question. So, what would it entail to make a sixplex a fiveplex? As far as, I mean, I know it's to alleviate the lot coverage. Could you just speak to the amount of effort that would have to go into something like that?
Well, the funding would be denied because the application is very specific and it's only approved for exactly what was applied for. And the plans have already, and engineering have all been completed on this project and submitted to the city for permitting. So it would be financially, it would be a big hit to KPHI, and the project would probably fail and not go forward because potentially they would have to go and reapply for funding that would probably not be awarded to them because they failed to perform.
Yeah. So not as simple as just lopping off a unit off the end.
No, there's a whole lot more stuff involved.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have any questions?
So my understanding would be that the initial plans were all, the designs for the final layout was all kind of pre-planned out and pre-approved, and the initial coverage looked like you had enough space, but in application is where we're running into the issue.
Exactly. This was the initial plan when the city donated the land. The KPHI got with their architect and did not want to take any additional land more than was required to construct these two sixplexes facing each other on this property.
I'm gonna ask, do we have a wild phone or something reverbing back?
Yeah, I think someone's talking too close to their speakers.
Connie, it's your phone. I'm not sure if you're on speakerphone or how you mentioned maybe a little close to the phone, but there's a lot of feedback.
Okay, I moved into the other room. Does that help?
That's much better.
Okay. Basically, what I had just stated was that when we, KPHI went to the city and the land was granted for donation to them, they had planned these two sixplexes. And then they went to their architect and they said, how much land do we need to construct these two sixplexes to face each other on this property? We do not want to take any more land than we need to do this project because this is a donation and we don't want to take advantage of that. We only want what we need. We don't want anything more. And somehow this variance took us all by surprise. So.
All right. Anyone else have any questions?
So would there be any documentation that would show that it was the city's error in calculation?
It was the architect that made that calculation.
And do we have any, because it speaks to the hiccup that I think that I'm bumping up against. If it's not your fault or your company's fault or the nonprofit's fault, put it that way. It's the city or the architect's fault. If we can document that, I think that puts us on much more solid legal ground. But I'll bring up my concerns here when the commissioners speak.
Okay, just wanted to say that this was always the intent. And with the funding through Alaska Housing, if we, as KPHI, if they did not move forward and do what they have applied and promised to do, the funding would be rescinded, and if they applied again, it would probably, more than likely, the funding may not be available or it would not be granted.
So just to kind of further, so the funds are encumbered right now for that project
Yes.
the way it's intended to be.
They've been awarded and granted, and it's been processed.
Okay,
We did not realize that there was any problem.
very good. All right. Anyone else have any questions for Mrs. Vane? If not, we will say thank you and then ask if there's anyone else on the line that would like to testify. And it appears there are none, so we will close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for discussion, and we'll start with Commissioner McIntyre.
Okay, well, the concern, again, I want to emphasize, I think it's a great project, and I think it should go forward. The concern I have is with regard to condition 2. The special conditions or circumstances have not been caused by actions of the applicant. And I think you started to address it, whereas when you address the question of, well, why don't you just do, why are we granting a variance if you could just do 5 instead of 6, a 5-plex instead of a 6-plex? And I heard the applicant say, well, you know, because we have the money for a 6, but it goes on there later on, it says, well, we can't give a variance merely because it constitutes a pecuniary hardship. I read that to mean it's not about the money. The money doesn't matter. We can't give variances because of money being taken or given or lost or gained. And I was, earlier I referenced back to the conference in February where the lawyer who was one of the speakers for the commissioner said, you know, variances should be rarely given, and actually address the issue of, you know, they can't be because an applicant comes forward and says, oh, we made a mistake, so give us a variance so that we can go ahead. Somebody even asked him, so if somebody builds a house and then comes forward and says, oh, well, we kind of encroached on the setback, he said the proper response is move your house. You don't give variances for that reason because you made the mistake. And I thought, well, gosh, that's kind of harsh, but okay. So I would like to ask Ms. Appleby if she would contact or if she would talk to Scott Bloom to make sure that I'm not on the wrong path here, that I'm not, because I think we've got to be real careful about in our role saying, well, we can give a variance that basically sidesteps the law. And I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to be a party to that. And that's my concern. I want this to go forward. I just want to know that we're doing it legally and in a way that respects the law and what variances are intended for, and that those conditions that are required for a variance are met. Now, one other comment is that's why I was asking, is there any documentation we can bring forward and say, this was not the applicant's fault? They acted in good faith. The city had an architecture, or somebody had an architect, who said, look, this is all you need, this will pass. Because then it's not their fault. It's not due to them, it's due to somebody else's mistake. And therefore, number 2 doesn't really apply, because now it's not their actions that caused this condition. And so I'm trying to find a workaround here that in my conscience would allow me to say yes. But at this point, unless there's new information coming forward, I have to say no. So that's my comment.
All right. Thank you. I think very well thought out, good points that I know I've been to several of those trainings too, and they make me cringe when they say the builder should move his house after the foundation's in, or the house.
I know.
But I've heard that same conversation. So before we have any other commissioners' comments or questions, I don't know if Elizabeth or city clerk, whoever might be able to weigh in on getting some clarification from the attorney on this, if need be. I don't suppose he's available on speed dial tonight. My other question, along with that, or kind of in conjunction with that, is if we voted to approve the variance tonight, and in the next 15 days, somebody comes in and contests the conditional use permit, and that goes through a process, and say for some reason it failed, hypothetically, does the variance go away then too, or how does that work? I mean, they've got to work in harmony somehow together, I'm assuming.
I can answer that question. So one of the condition 3 of the variance is that a conditional use permit must be approved by the City of Kenai Planning and Zoning Commission before a building permit would be issued for a sixplex.
Okay,
so there, but you could not, if you didn't have a conditional use permit for the sixplex, you couldn't build. So I suppose they could build a fourplex that exceeded the coverage.
But right. So in other words, if we pass this tonight, it really won't take effect until the 15-day appeal period has passed, because that has to happen and be completed before the variance would kick in, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. And then I don't know if you can speak to Commissioner McIntyre's concern and regarding wanting some guidance from legal.
Yeah. I mean, the commission could vote to delay their vote, but I guess I'll echo. I've been to the same trainings too, and at the American Planning Association that the Alaska chapter offers. I think is what Commissioner McIntyre is referencing, because it was discussed at one of the recent conferences. I guess I feel my the analysis in my staff report. I still feel this condition is met because Kenai Peninsula Housing Initiatives is a nonprofit. They're it's not a private entity trying to make money, and because if they don't provide low income and senior housing, then the value of the property reverts to the city. So I guess I still feel this condition is met. However, if the commission would like additional time, they could vote to delay. I don't know if the clerk has anything else to add to that.
Just that, I mean, if you want to postpone, this to the next meeting for decision, and then you can bring the city attorney on board and ask questions, but that's as much as I can give.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments or foresight, knowledge to share?
I think I might have a comment.
Commissioner Springer.
Yes, basically I'm looking at it from the perspective of the city has allowed us to issue variances. It's written in the city charter or whatever. So when a issue comes up that we feel is bearing a variance would be a good idea, then I don't see any reason why that would be considered illegal or not legal for us to grant a variance. And the second part about that I was going to bring up is that, the planning and zoning code says 30% coverage. Well, what are we talking here? 630 square feet is only 1.3% more. So we're talking 31.3% coverage. So we're only talking 1.3% that we're concerned with. So I don't know. In my opinion, I think we can move forward with it because it's not like we were requiring them to take up 90%, or we're going to or issue a variance for 90% coverage. We're only talking about 1% that we're giving them a variance for. So anyway, that's my opinion, and I would be voting in favor of it, if we get to that point. But if we want to delay it and get a more legal position, then I can fully understand that. So that's my point.
And kudos to your Colorado mathematical education. Again, you did very well. So I propose we have a couple options. Like you said, we could delay, we could postpone, which isn't probably in the best interest of anyone. The other option, and I'll check with the clerk on this, is that if we voted for this, and then we talk to the city attorney tomorrow morning, say we'll just put Commissioner McIntyre on the hot seat. He calls him and talks to him and feels he's got an issue. He could make a motion to reconsider, correct? And we could bring it back up that way as well. You're on mute, I believe.
Who?
The clerk's office is on mute. There
Sorry.
she is.
That was Tim McIntyre. His iPad died, and so he needed the phone number to call in, so he's calling back in.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I did not hear what you were saying.
I said that one of our options would be to postpone to get clarification from the attorney. The other option would be to vote in favor of it, and then somebody who votes in the prevailing way could check with the city attorney tomorrow, and if they have an issue, or if Mr. Bloom thinks that there is a reason, then it could be brought up for reconsideration. We could go that route. If nothing is a problem, everything moves forward. We don't have to wait 2 more weeks to discuss this and solve it. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Sorry to repeat all that.
That's all right. So anyway, that would be my suggestion. I think, the obvious thing would be, hey, can we shrink the building? Can we do a lot of these things? And I think, in my opinion, at no fault of really anyone, and again, maybe the poster child of when a variance maybe makes sense. And like you said, it's 1.some%. It's not huge. It isn't like they built it and then are coming and asking for forgiveness. And I would say, okay, maybe the architect was wrong, but somewhere the city was reviewing this too and could have done the calculations and said, hey, we got a problem before we started. So again, I think just it's one of those times where it makes sense to grant it. It's the perfect project for it. And so I will be in favor of granting the variance. Any other comments or discussion? Seeing none, we will please call for the vote, please.
And Chairman Tweet, actually, Commissioner Fikes has her hand up.
Oh, well, I didn't see that. Commissioner Fikes.
Yes. I just wanted to echo, I agree with you as well as the city as far as the variance. I agree with the findings that the city had to support it. I agree with the fact that it is a nonprofit. It's not a personal residence, a single entity. It's a community development. It's a community benefit. It was a community donation. There would be a lot of people involved that would benefit from it, and a lot of people involved that would not be able to take part in it should it not be approved because of the variance. And I do agree with what Commissioner Springer stated as well, as that the commission and the city has in their tool chest, if you will, the arsenal of a variance. I do understand the training, and it's not black and white in my opinion. I do believe that there are these mechanisms there, and I do believe the fault might have laid with the architect. It would have been interesting to know if there was any kind of a bond or contingent with the architect on the development of this project. So I do know when they're this large that there are some bonding issues. It would have been nice to know if that was a factor. So if there is any litigation, it wouldn't go to the nonprofit or the city of Kenai. It might lie with the architect in the development of the project. But as it's presented today, I don't see a point in delaying it. And for the reasons stated, I'm going to be agreeing with it. I'm voting yes.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, now we
Hello?
can call the. Oh.
Hey,
Mr.
yeah,
Halstead?
Nope, not me.
Oh,
no, it was
McIntyre.
Commissioner McIntyre.
Yes.
Unfortunately, my phone died and I've missed the last 10 minutes or so, trying to get back in. So sadly, I've missed a lot of the discussion, but it sounds like you're kind of reaching the end point. I'll just say that I wish I would have heard that discussion, but until I get more legal input from the city attorney, I don't feel comfortable going forward because my findings are that the second condition has not been met until we get additional information and proof, and therefore I will be voting no.
All right, very good. And I guess just to quickly recap, we did have discussion and our thinking was where there was two options to postpone, or we could vote for it and then check with the attorney. And if we didn't feel like we made the right decision, somebody could ask for a reconsideration and bring it back up. So those were our kind of our two options out in front of us. So, but I think you bring up valid points. It's a contradictory position in some ways from what the training is that we are given on a yearly basis. So I appreciate your input for sure. Any other commissioners wanting to speak? If not, we will call the roll.
Vice Chairman Fikes,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Commissioner McIntyre,
No.
Commissioner Askin,
Yes.
Chairman Tweet,
Yes.
and Commissioner Halstead.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, I'm gonna verify with the clerks. There's not an appeal period with this, is there, or is there one on the variance?
I'm sorry, I do not know. Elizabeth, are you familiar with that?
I believe there is because it's a public hearing.
Yeah, okay, you're probably right.
Yeah, I'd have to, yeah, I'm pretty sure there is because it's a public hearing.
Okay,
Thank
so same as the last one, then there is a 15-day appeal period that an affected party can file with the city. If none are filed, the variance permit will be awarded as long as the conditional use permit has been awarded. So, okay. Moves us along to item G, unfinished business. We have none. H, new business. I, pending items. We have none. Takes us to item J, reports. J1, City Council. Councilman Naxted, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Twait. Before I start, just backing up to some of the discussion you guys just had on this variance and whatnot. I want to remind all the commissioners that, our city attorney is only a phone call away. And when you're doing your research and have a question, I would encourage you to email, call, or whatever, Scott Bloom, and ask those questions. He's the one that's going to be defending your decision anyway. So he if it's something he hasn't looked at, he might have some great insight. So if it's a legal issue, call the attorney. Alternatively, too, if it's a parliamentary question, call Jacqueline or Jamie. Find out, hey, this is kind of what I want to do. Can we do it this way? And how could we do it, or how can we make it work? And you can come to a meeting, with some insights and other people on board with that. The city attorney, the clerk, the city manager, for that matter, of course, Elizabeth. You want to include her and send emails with questions too. All of that. But it's all part of coming together. It's not, you don't have to come in as an island. Just what you might think, because I went to some of those courses too that you guys did, and they are contradictory quite a bit. There's a lot of it's opinion. So the point is just go ahead and ask the folks in need. The other thing I want to do is thank Elizabeth too on on the rezone. I appreciate, Elizabeth, your laydown that kind of broke out the different things you can and can't do in rural residential versus the commercial, because that will be coming to council, and council isn't as versed in this as you guys are, and that'll be very helpful when we get to that point. So you guys missed a meeting, I think. So that means we're one up on you, plus we had a couple others. So if you go to page 61, we'll start with April 15th. And again, I'll just kind of summarize through as we go. Briefly, under scheduled public comments, we had Tim Dillon. Of course, this has been a month ago now, but he talked to us about a survey that he had performed peninsula-wide with a number of different businesses. How are you doing? How do you feel you're going to be able to survive? There's actually a whole lot of data, and it's something you might want to go to the website, the city website, to look at, or the EDD for that matter. I think there was one 3-piece pie chart, was, are you going to survive this? Yes, maybe, no. And about, I think 40% in that range didn't think they would. And another large percent maybe, and so forth. That was then. He's since been working on another survey, so we'll see how that stacks up with this. But it wasn't all good numbers. We enacted an ordinance increasing estimated revenues, appropriations, the airport revenue fund for professional services. We have HDL now as our consultant for the oh, I'm sorry. This is for the sand storage facility. Currently the sand storage isn't covered, and so we have an agreement to for HDL to actually do that work. Through the clerk's office, we awarded a contract to provide a cybersecurity audit. That's administration. I'm following up here now. It's not the one I thought it was. The meeting went too long. I forgot what I was going to say. But periodically, we got to do a cybersecurity audit on our systems and everything here. So we'll be moving forward with that. I'll be more careful with the rest of the brief here. Then we adopted unanimously Resolution 2020-19. And really what that is, it's a resolution to the governor at the time, encouraging, basically saying, hey, we're behind you, when you're ready to start opening up businesses at an appropriate time. The city of Kenai is here. We're in support of that as appropriate. So it wasn't a mandate or anything like that. It was just an encouragement to do so, which has been happening, and I think as appropriate. We supported a resolution supporting HR 6467, Coronavirus Community Relief Act, providing relief to come to the city eventually. And everything else was introduced. We had an executive session and we evaluated the city manager. It's an annual thing we do, and that turned out satisfactory. We then had a special meeting on April 16th, the following day, for review of the evaluation of the city attorney and the city clerk, and both of those were also satisfactory. Following that, we had a work session, and I know you guys have all got a copy of this, at least online. You've probably read it and understand it and all of that. It's a lot there. We spent about 9 hours listening through human resources, planning, finance, legal. All the different departments came in, explained their budget and what they do and their needs. Their budgets were bare bones under the circumstances with the coronavirus issues we're having, and very few increases, no increases in the mill rate. We are taking money out of the savings basically to kind of keep us going moving forward. We're hopeful that sales taxes will begin to increase here, and we'll be able to recover. There was some discussion from finance of a possibility of a mill rate increase for sales tax during the summer season, I believe it was, and not starting this year, but the following year. So it wouldn't be part of this budget. It was just kind of looking forward, giving council and the public a little bit to think about as we move forward. But so basically a status quo budget, if you will. And then our last meeting was on May 6th. We increased general fund estimated revenues by 26,000 for parks and recreation beautification, and that was really a pass-through from the state of Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation for bacteria monitoring through the watershed forum. So they'll be back again this year and doing some, and I think there's going to be one that will also be receiving through the DEC in July. So they'll continue to do that. And as you might recall, due to coliform bacteria and other bacteria, I suppose, showing up in the river, there was concern about the river, and it turned out it's primarily from the seagulls. I think the 300,000, whatever. There's a lot of gulls down there doing their thing, and it's natural. So basically, it doesn't put the river on a concern level, but it does. They need to inform the public that it's somewhat compromised only because of that. So it turns into kind of more of a public information. Don't clean your fish in the river, and maybe don't go swimming in it either, for that matter. But I think this is the last year for that. We had a couple of ordinances that were basically emergency ordinances. So we introduced them and approved them all in the same night, rather than over 2 meetings. We accepted and appropriated funds in the airport fund for, I think it was $1.6 million for the airport to use for any operational uses that they need through the CARES Act. And then we also accepted and appropriated funds from the CARES Act to the city itself. Anticipation of that actually coming to the city. It hasn't yet because it's still kind of working through Juneau. And also kind of appropriating, I think it was $50,000 to, when that money, if that money comes, to known city costs that we've had thus far. And some of the issues we've had, the administration is working through is just, how we're going to spend that money or be able to, because it is kind of limited on what you can do. We can't spend it or use it for propping up the city's lost income and that kind of stuff. So it has to go into anything that was specifically COVID-19 related. Then we adopted unanimously Resolution 2020-21, authorizing budget transfer in the general fund for the clerk software, which is what I thought I was talking about earlier. And this software add-on, and it'll be kind of a continuing cost, will allow a lot of forms to be done online. It'll expedite work and make it much easier. It'll reduce staff time, and something I wish we'd have done a long time ago, I think. We just didn't have the funds specifically available in the clerk's office to do that the last couple of years, though. Then we authorized the city of Kenai to issue general obligation refunding bonds for the principal amount not to exceed the sum of $1.25 million in regards to the library. The library, we took out a bond 20 years ago, and at 10 years they become, or we're basically refinancing it. So we're refinancing at a much lower interest rate, saving the city quite a bit of money. And we adopted unanimously selecting a successful firm for the professional environmental and civil engineering construction administration services for the Kenai Municipal Water, Sewer, and Wastewater capital improvement projects. So basically, what we did is who was selected was HDL again for this, and it doesn't give them any specific projects, but as they come up, they have the option, or we have the option as a city to use them as needed for those facilities. And moving on, then we had a discussion item on election method, and this is coming up at our next council meeting to some degree, and we're going to have a work session. It's the work group has determined that the most cost-effective way for elections through the borough is through mail-in. That's what Anchorage does currently, and so I think, well, the borough has an ordinance coming up in 2 weeks, moving that forward. We have the option to, purchase our own voting machines and doing it all on our own, but it kind of becomes a very large cost for the city, so that may be unlikely. But we're gonna establish a work session. You guys are all invited to come to if you like, to learn how the process works. It seems like some of the questions and concerns I heard during the discussion was, how do we avoid voter fraud and that kind of stuff. So there'll be more on that as we go. The city manager had a report at the end. I got 4 items here. One was the airport terminal. At that point was essentially complete. Maybe a couple punch item list items to complete, and we're also going through a design phase right now for a new boiler for the building that may be complete. That might be an add-on to that contract, so it could in fact continue on, but the base bid is essentially complete. Beaver Loop, was scheduled to be completed at the end of this month. Like most things, it'll probably be into June a little bit, but they're rotomilling currently. The bike path that we got a grant for to construct from Beaver Loop into town along Bridge Access Road. The state's insisting on designing it and doing the administration on it, even though it'll be a city facility and city maintained. The estimate through the state has gone up to about $2.5 million from what we had. That puts the city's out-of-pocket cost up to about $250,000 from closer to maybe $100,000 we had before. And the city manager is working through with the state because he believes, and I agree with him, that the city could design it more efficiently, effectively, and get that cost down quite a bit from that. It'll be our facility. It'll just happen to be in the state right of way. In fact, there's nothing too unusual. And then the last item is the Bluff project. We're to the point now where we are going through getting agreements with the Corps to start some design on it, the geotechnical surveying and whatnot, and kind of moving forward in that and how that is going to look as far as getting reimbursed for that as we move on. We do have a grant that we can utilize for a lot of that, but the city manager's got that at least to that point. And I do believe that is the end of my report. Chairman Twait.
All right, I have two questions. On that election, you said we're all invited. Now, did I miss that? Did you give a time or a date? And is that going to be a virtual thing?
Well, I hope not. Jacqueline, did we set a date that you know of for that? I don't have my calendar in front of me.
Let me bring that up. I know we just set a work session, but that's not on voting.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, I was talking to Jamie about it today because I wanted to make sure, we were doing that. I just frankly don't remember the date on that. And as far as doing things virtually, I'm not sure. I think it's going to be a discussion item at our next council meeting next week. We have a reoccurring item, city's response to COVID-19, and it's really just a general discussion. And I think many in council are probably looking at trying to return to some sort of normality in meetings. It's good for us. It's good for the public, and how that might look, I'm not sure, but we'll be discussing it at the next meeting.
Okay. And then my other question I had for you is, will there be at some point a ceremony, a grand reopening of the terminal at some point, or is there any plans for that? Do you know?
Intuitively, I'd say that there is going to be, because that's what cities do with those. And I don't know what the plan is for that. And it's kind of an issue right now, inviting the public into a confined space. So it might be later than sooner.
Gotcha.
I'm sure it's going to happen.
All right. Very good. Okay. Anyone else have any questions for Councilman Naxted?
Just to point out, Jamie's about to get on, so she can answer your question when she's on.
Oh, okay. Great.
Oh, wow.
Just like that.
So she's not quite there, but.
All right. In the meantime, anyone else have any questions for Councilman Naxted?
And she is now on.
And she's on. All right, great. Does she know the question?
No.
Oh, you look thrilled. We were wondering about this election discussion that is coming. Is there a date, a time, and are we assuming that is far enough out that it's going to be in person? Any information you can share?
There's going to be several election discussions. there's gonna be a work session that has not been set yet, and there's gonna be a public hearing or two on the ordinance itself. So, and at this point, no, we have no idea whether it will be in person or like this.
Okay, and the first work session is not scheduled yet?
No.
Okay,
That's why I couldn't remember it. We talked
Yeah.
about it, but we hadn't set a date, I guess, but I couldn't remember if we had or not.
well, now it makes sense. That's why you didn't, it would have locked into your brain otherwise.
Most likely.
Okay, well then we'll move on to Borough Planning, Vice Chair Fikes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Chairman. I just want to point out, I need to get offline and Jamie's taking over as
Oh,
clerk.
gotcha. Well, great. Seamless transition then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty, the borough met on Monday. We did the 2 or 3 utility easements in the Homer area, Anchor Point, I believe. And then we had also a variance, I believe, for a Castaway Cove. There was a structure that got caught in the fire and it wasn't completely destroyed. The foundation was still intact. And so the property owners were looking to continue on building. However, it was discovered that they were in the 50-foot anadromous habitat protection zone. So the Kenai River Center deemed it unacceptable and denied their permit to reconstruct. And so it was before us. And so we actually held up that denial. But in the discussion, what they realized was that the investment wasn't necessarily the issue. You can't obviously grant it because of finances, but what they were saying is that if we had to backfill that foundation and we had to disturb another area inside of that, would that be as detrimental as allowing the people to go on the exact same footprint they already have? They were just going to go straight up. It was going to be a simple 1-story cabin, I believe. And so we denied it, but then in the discussion of it, the denial, it was discussed that they were able to come back and do a conditional use permit, I believe. And so then that was going to be their course of action. And then that consumed most of the night going back and forth. Everybody was in agreement in trying to allow it to move forward, but it was a procedural issue as far as how to do that. And then we moved into a discussion on a recommendation to the assembly for a lease in the Kenai area for a wireless communication tower that was going to be in a institutional zone. More accurately, it was going to pretty much be in the backyard of the Kaleidoscope Elementary. And the principal had raised concerns that it was within 100 feet of his school. And so in discussion with the school principal and the wireless applicant, they decided to move it back 300 feet, but it was still going to be in the area of their trails and it was still going to be in the residential area. But the principal was okay with it and it was merely a recommendation to the assembly. But we didn't have a whole lot of detail on why they chose that location. And if they were as quickly able to move it once they had discussion with the principal from one area to the next, why did they have to have it right there in an institutional zone? And speaking with Elizabeth, I do understand now that it is a accepted zone to do that. But there was some concern from some folks in Cooper's Landing and then others on the school board about having a wireless tower in an institutional area and a residential area. It ultimately did get approved and it is going to get recommended to the borough, but it just seemed to me it was kind of fast and loose the way it was presented. I understand that there's steps and this is just one of the first steps, but what I felt was lacking was detail and more transparency. So be looking for that. It'll be coming down the pipe. And then we also had some discussion from administration. There's going to be some changes made to the Borough Commission, most immediately to go from 13 folks on the commission down to 11. The first one to go would be Seward, followed by Soldotna. And then it was discussed that the cities have a seat at the table through appointments and nominations, but those that aren't in incorporated cities, examples being Nikiski or Anchor Point, Ninilchik, some of those areas, they go through a different process. And so with the vacancy from Seward, the current commissioner was concerned that somebody from Ninilchik, who's not an incorporated city, that if they were to expire their term and then wanted to circle back and come into the commission, that they could then step over into a vacancy through Ridgeway or a different area. But those of us that are in the city were not afforded that same opportunity. So if your term expires, that's it. According to the borough mayor, you're done. So I just thought I'd share that. I don't know what's going to happen next. There's been a whole lot of changes. There's been 3 folks that have retired out of the planning department, Max Best and a couple other names I'm not familiar with. And so in doing so, a lot of changes are happening within the next 6 months. So that's all I got at the moment. Still got a seat at the table. So if you got a voice, let me know. I put my 2 cents in on our wireless tower. So whatever your thoughts are on that.
All right, anyone have any questions for Vice Chair Fikes? All right, thank you. We will move on to item J3, City Administration. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Church. Wait, I just wanted to follow up on Commissioner Fike's report. I did speak with her about the communication tower, so I'll just share with the commission what I shared with her. So telecommunications tower, it's a principally permitted use. It's allowed basically without a conditional use permit in the education zone. So it would not come before the Planning and Zoning Commission for approval. However, there's a whole section of code that deals with communications tower in the city. And so the even with granting the lease from the borough, because they own the parcel of land, they still do have to apply to the city for a permit, and then it's administratively approved by the city planner. So just wanted to speak on that. And then, one other thing with the borough is our hazard mitigation plan is now formally adopted. So it will replace the one from 2010 that is in the borough's hazard mitigation plan. So they have an annex for each city, and ours, it's finally done basically. So the city is now good until I guess 2024 basically is when the city would need to think about updating the plan again to have it in place before 2025. The U.S. Census, so I'm on the complete count committee for the U.S. Census. We are meeting tomorrow, if I remember correctly. The census for door-to-door surveys is starting up again. There's a way you can actually look at the percentage results on and then the city does have a page dedicated to the COVID-19 response. At this point in time, there hasn't been much new information posted, but there is an Alaska business resource list that is now on there, and it has some good links for businesses within the city. And And then the budget meeting was held recently. And so I don't believe there were changes to the draft planning budget or the lands budget from what was proposed. And I just wanted to also call out there. There's an efficiencies report that will be. It's on the. It'll be before the city council at their meeting next week. And I just wanted to call that out because it's the sector for that, and it's a report that shows efficiencies that were done to save money at the city. So some way we could perform the same thing with less money. So for planning and for lands, we referenced the switch to use the iPads instead of printing packets, and also the advertising change where we no longer need to post a newspaper ad twice for a public hearing. So I just wanted to call those out since those are part of the efficiencies report. And that is the end of my administrative report.
All right. Jamie, anything to add?
Nope.
Nope. Good, then we will just move on to additional public comment. Is there anyone out there online that wants to publicly comment? We're assuming no. All right.
Out there, it's just the commission at this point.
Okay, awesome. All right, no informational items. Next meeting, May 27th, 2 weeks from tonight. Commissioners' comments and questions. Commissioner McIntyre. Commissioner Halstead.
Hello? None on my end.
There we go. Commissioner McIntyre.
Yeah, well, these newfangled phones. I just wanted to say I'm sorry that I missed the discussion, virtually all of it, after my comment. I would have liked to have heard others, and I think it probably would have been very instructive. I will call the city attorney and follow up because it is a concern of mine. And I just wanted to make sure, I assume that's probably privileged information and would not be a violation of the Open Meetings Act to discuss that in, just between the two of us. But I suppose anything that's said could be brought back forward and put on the record. But anyway, yeah, I hope the project goes forward. As I said at the beginning, I think it's a great idea. I'm all in favor of that. But I'm also in favor of, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. So anyway, yeah, it's good to hear everybody's voice again and to be back meeting. So thank you.
Very good. And I'll just echo again, I think it was a good discussion on that because that is those dicey gray areas that are worthy of conversation. And I'm glad you brought it up. So we will move on now. Commissioner Halstead.
Still nothing on my end.
All right. Commissioner Askin.
Nothing here.
All right. Vice Chair Fikes.
No comment, all good.
Commissioner Springer.
Nothing additional.
Nothing additional. Very good. I will add nothing other than if you haven't filled out your census, get on there and do that. Make sure it happens. And don't deny them at your door if they come. So with that, I have nothing else and the meeting is adjourned. Stay safe. Good night.
Night.
And Chair